Hello, my name is Nathan Humphrey, and I'm going to be presenting the fact-based story of Vasily Arkhipov during the Cuban Missile Crisis. To start this story, it would begin a while before, many years before in fact. Vasily was a submariner who had sailed for the Soviet Union for many years aboard nuclear submarines. He was involved in an incident called the K-19 incident that saw a nuclear meltdown aboard a submarine, and he led the group through that and they survived. But nothing would compare to this situation he'd find himself in. During the Cold War, it was the struggle and battle between communism and democracy, but mainly it was the forces of the US against the forces of Russia, and Vasily sailed for Russia. Now, at this time, he was deployed in a submarine around Cuba because at that time Cuba was an ally of the Soviet and communist powers, and they had nuclear missile ranges all over their island, and Cuba is only 90 miles from Florida. So it caused a big panic at that time called the Cuban Missile Crisis. So to respond to the Cuban Missile Crisis, America had put up a line called a embargo around Cuba to keep out any more missiles and Soviet help. This is what Vasily knew was going on around him, but he had no confirmation other than that information he had known before. At this time, he was in a submarine deep under the water. He had lost contact with Moscow for 8 days now. His crew was literally dead in the water. They had to hide from ships that were pursuing them around the embargo line. They were carrying at this time a nuclear torpedo that was capable of destroying probably a lot of a small city, or at least an entire fleet, and they were trying to evade capture. The United States military, the embargo line, I believe it was the Chestnut line, they detected this submarine that Vasily was in, and they went to go pursue it, not knowing that it had nuclear weapons. So they dropped the depth charges around the submarine to try and force it up. And this was about the stupidest thing they could have done, but they didn't know that it had nuclear arms on it. So Vasily saw all his crewmates around him, everyone freaking out. There was a big argument about what should be done, because all the crew, they knew nothing about what was going on. They lost contact with Moscow, for all they knew, and what they did think was that war had broken out and that they needed to do their duty and fire the torpedo. If they did that, they very well may have caused the end of the world, because that would have prompted a nuclear response from America, which would have prompted a nuclear response from Russia, which would have eventually cascaded to involve every place you saw on that map that was in color. So it would have been very bad. Vasily understood this, and he knew how to keep calm in these sorts of situations. It required the authority of all 3 senior members. The other 2 agreed. Vasily did not, to fire the torpedo. He did not think that they were under attack. He didn't think it was worth it to be wrong. He would rather die than doom the world, and that was the hill he was willing to die on. So after convincing his fellows for probably a very short but monumentally important time, they decided to give in to Vasily because he wouldn't say yes. So they appeared at the surface, came up, and they were surrounded on all sides by huge destroyers. The destroyers did not open fire. Once they had received word about the nukes aboard, Russia got in contact with them, ordered all of them home, and instead of receiving the hero's welcome he should have, because of the climate at the time, because of communism versus democracy, he was actually criticized heavily and called a coward. Some people have said it would have been better if he just went down with his ship, and that he should have fired. He made Russia look weak. So he had to live with that for a while, but eventually, as he grew older and moved up in rank through, the military, which he remained in even after the Soviet Union, he eventually started to get his flowers from everyone, and they realized that he might be one of the only people on Earth to have claimed for, being Earth's savior.